Howdy everybody. So now that we're done with the elbow here, we're going to be moving on to the shoulder. We've gone ahead and cut to length the two cables that we'll need. For the screw side, we need it to be 8.5 inches, and the clamp side we want to be 10.75 inches. Since we have to replace both of these, I've gone ahead and taken the motor off of the mount so that we can more easily get access to the screw that's closer to the motor. It's possible to do while it's still on there, especially if you still have one of the sides of the cable still in. Then you can try to play around with it. But with both sides gone, it's a bit more convenient to do it this way. So you can use the brakes to get access to it. On this side, the green arm, the cable closest to the motor is going to be the shoulder, or the screw side in the front of the robot, while I'm here in the back of the robot. So we've already got it inserted through. We're going to place the cable through, place the motor through, and then the motor has a flat on it that allows it to get over the caps in there. We'll put one or two of these screws in, and remember to put those on again afterwards. You can go ahead and stop here. All right, so now we're gonna, we've bolted the motor back on, and now we're going to get the other end situated. Go ahead and go ahead and get a new screw, because this one has the head stuck in. Again, this is an 832 vented screw that you can find at McMaster, and just a plain 832 washer. Get it most of the way threaded on there. And then we're going to take the end of the cable, pass it through the hole here, grab the other end, and then we want to thread that through the screw, grab the thing here, and place it on. I'm going to use my handy dandy cable crimper to get this nice and tight. If you want to cut it a little extra long and use a knot, that also works. I like to use a figure 8 or a figure 8 with an extra turn to make it a stopper knot. And then just to make it look a little better, cut the edge off. Cool, so that should fit through fine. And then if we bring the motor up this way, should be able to wiggle the screw back in like that. So now we've got it most of the way right. And so now the trick is to turn the motor. If you're real fancy, you can use use the Raven code and run it in the torque control mode, and then apply a small torque, maybe 20 milliNewton meters, 40 milliNewton meters, and I'm not sure which direction you'll need, but you can play around with it, and then use that to wind in the cable. For now, we're going to just turn the brakes on and spin it by hand, and we'll show you what that looks like in a second. All right, so I've put both ends through so that I can keep it tight against the end there, and then try to hit that. Okay. Hit that with the groove side. Quinn, would you mind holding the cable like that for me? Yeah, just like that, and pull it kind of that way. Perfect. Thanks. And then if this is the hardest part, then it's really not too bad. Okay, so now that we've got it on, we can twist that. Make sure, so we're going to leave that kind of loose so that we can get that, so that we can situate this part in the right way. So we want the top to be coming out the longer side, kind of like this, because it's going to be wrapping around and coming back down here. So we want to watch to make sure we don't just pull it on through and make all that effort for naught. You can also do it the other way, where you start with the plate on first, kind of loose, and then try to thread the cable in. I think you'll find that's easier to do with one of the newer robots. Cool. So it's got a few millimeters left out there, and that looks good. So now we'll tighten this down, not to strip the screw or the threads. Yeah. And so now, since we're all the way, when we're at this joint angle, we're all the way out on this side of the cable, so we only need to have 1 or 2 wraps to provide that kind of friction for the end of the cable. So we're gonna go ahead and go down, and back. That's one. And then once more. And back into the small gap that's still there. And yeah, make sure to realign so it's all right there. Now we're gonna put it back up so that we can get some access to, or so that we can clamp it down with our clamp here. If we can. So now we can kind of hold it tight like that, and then use the brakes, push it up a little bit to expose that, and then it still kind of wants to fall against us, so we need to make sure to kind of hold it up while we're doing that. Thank you, Melody. And then line it up so the groove has the cable, and make sure to get it in nice and straight. These ball end Allen drives are nice to kind of align that right. And then you want to make sure that it's in underneath the whole groove. So we're going to slip it in like that, then hold it down. So as long as we kind of get it in place, we can then pull it tight after that. So let's go ahead and inspect here. It looks pretty good. We can grab the other end with our handy dandy forceps. use that to pull it nice and tight. And then when we tighten it down, we want to make sure that it doesn't kind of torque out to the side, because if this isn't well aligned with the plate here, then it's going to start rubbing into the other parts of the robot and kind of change the way that, or change the hard stops of the robot. So let's go ahead and loosen here again, pull that nice and tight, and tighten that down. Again, make sure not to strip those threads. We'll play with this a few times to make sure it goes from side to side all right, kind of loosen up any inherent slack in the system. And then with it all the way to that end, we can take care of that slack with the nut here. Now it's feeling pretty good. Play with it a bit more. And take a bit more of that slack. If you find yourself playing with this screw a lot, it's probably because it's the cable is kind of pulling through the clamp on the other end. So you might want to take care of that just by tightening it down a little bit more, or maybe putting a crimp on the end of the cable here. In some ways, having it slip through the clamp is nice because it provides a bit of a safety check for overcurrenting. However, if you're looking for nice and accurate tight cables, then having a hard stop on both ends might be kind of nice. So we'll just run that back and forth. Yeah, it seems pretty good.